Welcome to Charm Conversations, an interview series that focuses on meeting some of the individuals in the hypnosis community and finding out a little bit more about them. I'm Cy. I'm going to be your host through these conversations, and I've had the benefit of meeting quite a few interesting individuals, both stateside and internationally, who I felt were great individuals to speak about what they see in the community, what got them started in hypnosis, and why they're here. So let's take a few minutes, talk to each one of them, get an idea about where they see the community going, where it's been, how they got started in hypnosis, and how they're just like the rest of us, looking for an interesting time and figuring out the human mind. Here at Charmed, we know it's the holidays, and you just feel like all the pressure is coming down on top of you. But just around the corner, there's hope, a little bit of light, and a little bit of fun on the horizon. Charmed Online 2021 happens in January 2021, and tickets are still on sale for the low price of $25. Every ticket you get gets you into the pre-con classes, which will include such names as Wise Guy, The Secret Subject and Allison, and Lee Allure, in addition to the 3 days of fun following with the full convention. Pick up your ticket now and come join us for some after the holidays hypnosis education and fun. We'll see you there. The next interviewee that I had the pleasure of talking with is SinisterDenial, aka Sinister, who's a member of the hypnosis community across the pond, and also a member of the Mesmerotic team. He definitely has a unique style, which is apparent at EHU when I first saw him in action. So here he is, SinisterDenial. So do you go by Sinister, Mr. Sinister, Dr. Sinister, just the Sinister?
Just Sinister works great.
Just Sinister works great, okay. So we're talking with Sinister today, and he has decided, do you go by he? What are your pronouns, I should ask?
He, him, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for checking.
I'm terrible about asking at the first point, but I do try to remember eventually. Yeah, so you were recommended by a bunch of people who all wanted to hear some of your thoughts on things, and I know...
That's very flattering.
I've heard your name said around for a while, so yeah, I've seen your classes. I think it has been a great idea. So today, let's just talk about a few things. What is your resume? If somebody didn't know who you were, what's your resume in the hypnosis community?
So currently, I'm... Where am I currently? So on my current resume, I am one of two people who are the production company Mesmerotic. We make hypnotic-themed porn-ish videos that range from probably safe for work if you're not listening too carefully to definitely don't watch this. And that's with Imaginatrix. I do professional sessions online, hopefully in person at some point when the quarantine isn't a thing so much. I produce files. I teach both privately and for cons, workshops, that kind of thing. I've been doing this 4.5 years or so. And then been in the general kink scene for a bit longer than that.
Was it a translation of hypnosis from the kink scene, or was hypnosis something you were always interested in first?
So I got into it because I was doing kink online.
Okay.
And got really frustrated. You know, if you're doing DS or sort of power exchange kind of things online, you're limited to telling them to do things, which is fun and it's great and it's good. But, you know, there's a certain amount of frustration in the, you know, that slight disconnect between this sort of how much effect you can have on your submissive or on your partner. And I found out that someone I knew was experimenting with hypnosis. I was like, that doesn't sound like a real thing, but sure, I'll investigate it. Read a few books, learned about it, found out that it was a lot of fun and really, really fulfilling for its own sake. And from there, it's just been a time of really wanting to get to grips with it more, wanting to learn more about it, wanting to find all the ways it could tie in with my existing interests. So, yeah, definitely came into it from the kink side of things, but quickly became a sort of core part of my sort of kink identity, I'd say.
So it translated your experience from kink over to hypnosis because it was just a way of enabling further kink for you? Was the interest of hypnosis just on its own something that caught your attention, or was it just more of another tool in your toolbox?
It started out very much as just this is a better way to do kink at a distance, but from there, very much became an interest of its own. Um, I really like the challenge of it. I like the sort of discovery of it, finding the different ways that different people react, sort of decoding exactly how people's minds work, exactly the kinds of language you want to be using, finding all of those bits. I really like the sort of artistry in how you phrase things, in how you build these experiences. I like how powerful it can be. Like power exchange, control is definitely something that's very big for me in terms of what I enjoy. And there's not much higher control than getting inside someone's head to that extent. Yes, it's definitely something I would say I enjoy on its own merits now.
Yeah, and I'm much the same way. I've been a fan of hypnosis for a long time, but I think the puzzle that is the human mind was always what interested me. And hypnosis being the ability to access that puzzle, to move pieces around, or to be able to understand why somebody was doing something was always just such a lure for me. So I absolutely get where you're coming
Mm.
from. So that answers what got you interested in hypnosis in the first place. If you had somebody who was starting out in hypnosis in kind of the kink world, what would be some advice you'd give them?
Um, Two pieces of advice, I think. First, uh, piece I came across when I was first learning and I found very useful is just practice constantly. The most difficult thing to get down is the patter, is the being able to just talk and not really say anything while you're desperately trying to think of what to do next. That ability to just keep going through like mantras or loops or like little trancy language snippets that you've memorized and don't even have to think about anymore. Once you've got that down, it's a lot easier to sort of just keep letting that go while you're trying to think about where you want to take the trance next. And that really only comes through experience. So I'd say practice. Practice, and you don't need to practice with anyone. You can practice trancing inanimate objects if that's going to help you to get into the flow of just keeping talking. And I think the second thing is never let anyone know that it's the first time you're trying something. It helps you to feel more confident if you're pretending it's something you've done 100 times. It helps your subject to believe in the trance that you are building if you tell them you've done it 100 times.
So does that apply just towards hypnosis trance in the first place, or even suggestions that you've never really done before?
Um, I think it very much depends on the context, particularly when it comes to hypnosis in general, like trancing someone as you're learning. You've done it before. You've done that induction before. You know how it works.
Hmm.
If obviously that comes with a sort of caution around, obviously if it's something that's risky or something you're not sure on, make sure that you're talking it through and getting to grips with it theoretically and technically. Make sure you're taking all the proper precautions, make sure you've discussed any potential problems. But then once you actually start, bring out that confidence even if you have to fake it.
That's some great advice. I'm sure that everybody who starts off has got to be nervous. I know I was. First time you do it, it's
Absolutely.
like, how do you start? Where do you go? And you just psychoanalyze yourself of, oh, they're just going to be so, critical of everything that I'm saying. No, and
Mm.
that was one thing I loved about Trick saying. Uh, the comment she made was that really it's just talking. All you're doing is talking to somebody, and if you
Hmm.
take that from a practice perspective and just start talking at them, that that makes all the difference in the world whenever you start hypnotizing.
And if one of the things it takes a while to do is figure out what your hypnotic voice sounds like. What is it that you sound like when you're doing that? How do you naturally talk in that way? And if you're not sure about that, try out some things that other people have done. People write scripts, try recording a few, listen back to them, see how they feel. How would you change them? How would you edit them? How would they flow more naturally for you? And that's a good way to start sort of figuring out how you might write things yourself, how you might do things off the cuff.
Yeah, little bit of a side comment for a second. I have to say that I really thought this was more your trancy voice in general. It's very sultry, low, low dulcet tones. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Oh, see, there it is. There you go. Yeah, everybody
It's the
has.
British accent. It really helps.
I'm sure it adds that little bit of an exotic to it. Everybody's like, ooh. Yeah, I think the fun part about that is sometimes language between countries, different word choices can always throw things for a loop. First time somebody was doing through a guided imagery, they said something about a drawer in a kitchen, and the word that they used, I can't remember what it was. It just stopped my brain, and I'm just going, "What the hell is that?" And didn't even think about it until all of a sudden it's over. And, so how did everybody find it? I'm like, what the hell is that? And they go, oh, that's a drawer in a kitchen. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Ruined the whole experience for me, but it was still kind of like my brain's going, huh, yeah.
Yes, two nations separated by a common language.
Yeah, I think the English language is a little too rough on everybody else. We just steal from everybody. I just.
Oh yeah, well we have been for like 1,000 odd years.
Oh, that is very true. I didn't even think about it that way, but yeah. So, moving on before I get to the real. So what's one rumor that you wanted to dispel about hypnosis? Something that you hear constantly that you find is something that people should be either better educated about, should understand more about, or should just basically throw in the trash and never look at again?
I'm not a fan of the common saying, and I know it's meant to be sort of subject empowering, that you can't be made to do what you don't want to do. Obviously, that's true to some extent. Naturally, people are going to reject suggestions that they don't like. But hypnotic language and hypnosis in general are meant to manipulate and twist how you think.
Yeah.
I think a better way of putting it is you can't be made to want you can't be made to do something you don't want to do, but you can be made to want to do it. And some people, are better at that than others. Hopefully most people wouldn't do that because, it's unethical. But there are unethical people out there, and I think leaving subjects feeling that whatever comes along they can just ignore it is doing the opposite of empowering your subjects. You're sort of letting them sort of just assume they're going to be safe. And if you have access to if someone you trust has access to your mind, they can change the way you see the world. That's not a bad thing, but it is something to be aware of.
And you're the second person to bring that up, which is a very valid point. They said the same thing, which is that you could ignore things, but really it comes down to only things that you have really thought about or have something in place or a belief in already before you go into trance was kind of their point. Like if you understand that shooting somebody is wrong, but if you've never thought about, well, throwing a water balloon at somebody, is that wrong? You could do it completely and end run around and do something else with it. They never thought about it. So why would they have a predisposition to say no or yes to it? And that leaves them open to a little bit more. Was kind of their point.
Absolutely.
It's a terrible analogy on my side, but.
And when you're looking at sort of these kind of hypnotic relationships, which can go on for quite some time, and you've got a lot of access for sort of ongoing conditioning, you can start to seriously change how people think, how people approach things, and you start to really build up that trust, which can be incredibly hot, incredibly fulfilling when done consensually and in the right way. But it is also open for abuse if people aren't doing it properly. And I think it's also something to be aware of as the top. If you go in as a top going, well, any suggestion I give that they don't want, they'll just reject, you're going to be less cautious and probably less safe than if you're thinking, no, I have to be careful about what I tell them, because if I tell them something that they don't like, it could cause them problems.
Yeah. Which I think more people should be aware of. The more I think about it, because I was actually writing up a conversation on FetLife specifically about this, about, hey, here are some basic guides for hypnosis. And one of the things was about this topic because it had come up in a previous interview, that people should be more aware, not only about what's in files if they're going to listen to stuff. If people aren't going to disclose what's there, be open, be a little more cautious. And when you're going to do negotiation and consent with somebody, make sure you cover things that you're clear about. Hey, I want you to only do these things, or these are the things that I'm agreeing to, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that there aren't those chances for a negative reaction or kind of an accidental break of consent or negotiation, pre-negotiated items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. It just like ends that conversation like, well, where do you go from there?
Yeah,
Well,
negotiation. It's good.
Yeah.
Do it.
Absolutely. Negotiation and consent. Two very important things. We'll hammer it into your head, we swear. So, okay. Now, going more to the fun side, away from the dark side. Well, actually more towards the dark side. Can you share one of your favorite kinks with hypnosis? Something that you really enjoy? I know you talked about power exchange being a thing before, control.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult, where do you start? What do you choose? I've always been a big fan of combining... Well, if you insist. I've always been a big fan of combining hypnosis with orgasm denial. That can be incredibly fun. When you remove the limitations for everything to have to be physical, or a reliance on devices or physical contact. It just opens up a whole world of making people desperate messes, which is delightful. On the sort of, as you were saying, the darker side, my slave and I have an ongoing sort of like conditioning regimen going on, sort of like long-term behavior modification and sort of like twisting things up in really hot ways. It works really well with your sort of power exchange with MS, DS, creating behaviors, modifying existing ones, changing habits, and then getting the reward or the satisfaction of seeing those play out in day-to-day life and making it more than just we're doing a scene here, being able to extend it out into more of a lifestyle thing.
So can you give an example of something that's not disclosing too much about your relationship?
Certainly. What's a good example here? What's the best example of this? So, for example, using conditioning through files and sort of repeated live trances to enhance the submissive feelings associated with certain acts, to take certain parts of a routine and make them something that's far more meaningful to the dynamic. So taking, for instance, kneeling to put a collar on and making it feel far more important, or making being bound in certain ways feel particularly safe and like a safe space to then relax into the dynamic, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I had a couple of examples in my head, but I wasn't really sure where they applied. I know a lot of people would have been like, okay, what does he mean? What does he mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so those were two. Did you have a third you wanted to share? We had the option.
Ooh. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with amnesia play, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Messing up
What
people's memories. That ability to hide information or replace it, to take aspects of what essentially makes someone who they are, because our memories are so fundamental to that, and being able to twist them or change them temporarily. And being able to hide triggers and hide trances, to be able to make what happens to people are surprised, give them little tricks and traps that they'll find and enjoy later on. It Amnesia and General Memory Play is definitely a favorite.
Yeah, from personal experience, I absolutely can say that is a very interesting thing to do in hypnosis. Absolutely. So, one of the things you mentioned before that you make files and you do teaching. So, do you feel that what's one of the hardest things that you find in making files or content for people who enjoy your work? Is it trying to find something that everybody will enjoy? Do you only do something for specific people, or do you try to do something for a broader audience? And what are some of the difficulties with that?
So I've done both sort of custom files for individuals and more general releases, and the custom files tend to be simpler because okay, this is what this person wants. Obviously, you craft each one individually. You make sure that it's a personal thing, but you have a rough map of where the trance needs to go. You can plot out in advance, okay, we want to cover these areas. This is how I want them feeling by the end. And ideally, you get to know the individual at least slightly beforehand so you can build it for them. General files I find much more difficult because you don't have that personal connection. You're putting something out there and you're going, okay, is this one in a series? Can I assume they'll have listened to the previous ones? Are people going to want to listen to it repeatedly? Are they going to want to just listen to this once? Do I have to make it interesting from the start? Because obviously some people might just tune out if it's not interesting. It's the not knowing your audience I find particularly difficult. And not knowing your audience then brings with it a not hearing back from your audience. So you sort of put something out and you go, okay, this got a certain number of listens. That's the information I have on how it was received.
Right.
So yeah, a lack of feedback and a lack of input to begin with, I say, would be the most difficult things for production from the audio side.
Putting your effort out into the void and not really getting an echo back. Yeah, that would be fun.
Absolutely, yes. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was just going to say, on the video, sort of more or I guess sort of wider sort of things, I have been doing things like just putting an induction out every day, though I've been slacking with that a bit lately and need to get back into it. But that's been better because I've been treating that more as I'm doing this for my sake, just as a way to try and prompt myself to keep doing different inductions. And therefore, it doesn't matter if people don't listen to this, I'm enjoying it. And that is a lot easier than going, I have to construct this thing for everyone.
You don't have to put the weight of the expectations you don't know on the file you're making or the process you're doing.
Exactly. Whereas with the little inductions I've been doing, it's basically just, I enjoyed that. I thought that was quite fun. Maybe someone else will as well. And that's a lot easier.
And with a small community like we've got, you end up usually hearing, I don't know, things about everybody's files, one way or the other. Being active on Twitter, like I know you are, and most of us, that there's a lot of conversations where people will reshare stuff really quickly because they really like your stuff, or that they found something particularly interesting, or will comment back on Twitter. I'm sure that's got to be nice and validating to a certain extent that somebody out there did enjoy your work.
That's true. That's very true. It's always good to see sort of little comments or oh, that was good, or seeing people oh, I'm looking forward to listen to this, and it's yes, this is what I thrive on. That makes it worth
your
it.
Attention. So, as a content creator, do you feel like there's a duty on your side to kind of educate people about hypnosis as well as make cool and custom content or things that you enjoy?
I think there's a duty to one extent, in that I think if you are producing content, you have a duty to ensure that people consuming that content can do so safely. So I think you've got a duty to be hey, this is what's in this file, here's a content warning, that kind of thing. And have resources available and be willing to answer questions in, is this safe for me kind of style. But I don't think there's a responsibility for teaching beyond that. I think you're not doing anything wrong if you choose not to teach. That said, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy doing workshops and classes and private tuition. I find it incredibly fulfilling. I love being able to share the things I've learned. I love being able to sort of try and apply what I've done and the sort of techniques I enjoy to new situations. So if someone comes along and says, okay, so I want to try doing this with this partner and these are the problems I've been having. I love like working with people to try and figure out, how, sorry about that, how certain, how do you combine this kink with hypnosis? How can this enhance this other thing? How can I share what I've done in a general way that's not just anecdotal? How can I share the fun that I've been having and the joy I've found in this thing that I do and make it available to more people? So as I said, I don't think there's a requirement for it. I don't think you're obligated to do it if you're producing content, but it's something that I choose to do because I love it.
No, and that's great to hear. I know that there's a lot of people who enjoy finding workshops, not only at conventions, but local group stuff. I just always find that it's an interesting conversation to have with individuals because there seems to be so little education out there. Not criticizing anybody who chooses to put it out there, but there's no real easy place to find it. If you go look on YouTube, there's 1,001 videos. But it always came to mind for me when I started looking up hypnosis this year, as it really was the first time I really kind of looked into the technique behind it, that somebody would talk about an induction technique. For example, the one I always love to bring up is a hair pull induction. You go look that up online, you find nothing about it. And it's like, well, what the hell how does that work? Or somebody has a custom name for something, like somebody the other day talked about the little shelf induction. What the hell is that? Well, there's not really an easy way to find it. And when you start looking around for some of this stuff on the internet, be wary of the things you find in response. Ooh. Dark alleys in the internet.
I think there's also some things I've come across is there's some reluctance, I think, to make it more available, more accessible. Some things I've come across is like people are happy to share the advanced techniques, but the idea of like doing some basics, hey, Hypno 101, this is how you get started. Some people I've spoken to have been like, oh, do we really want more people into the community? Which I don't think I agree with. Like I came into this from the kink scene. I don't see any harm in more people because more people is good. But I think that's possibly an aspect of it. It's that feeling of we're happy with the group we have now.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said about not necessarily agreeing with do we want more people in the community. I think that there's, it was raised up to me that people could either learn about hypnosis on their own, or they can learn about hypnosis and how to do it properly. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of difficulty in concatenating or diluting out the things you really need to know, those nuggets of information that are important. And I think that was the hardest part I found when I first started was how do you find your trance when all you really have are files out there, and you don't know about modalities. You don't know about the different methods for doing a confusion induction to help a person who struggles with, like I struggle with ADD. How do you get them to focus better and kind of help them slip into trance? That kind of information, I know it can be used and harmful, but I think like anything else, tools can be both good and bad. Just depends on who wields them. So I get where you're coming from, and I agree with you.
I mean, for myself, like as I said, I started out very much self-taught. And I was fine. I was doing okay, like with slowly sort of getting better. But it wasn't until I went to the London Hypnosis Workshop weekend nearly 3 years ago. I think 3 years ago now, run by Leah Lur, that I was like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
now I've had a chance to talk to other people who actually do it. Now I've had this experience and this exposure to people who actually know what they're talking about. Now I can see all these different ways that people approach it. Now I get it. There's something incredibly valuable to that.
Oh, absolutely agree. My mind was blown because Charm 2020 was the first time I had ever been to a group hypnosis event of any kind. There's not really a community in my area, but you're right. To see the individuals, to hear the conversations, to understand what they're talking about, you could read the books all day long, but sometimes it's that context that you're missing that helps lock things into place. And it's your brain. Any perceived difficulties you might have, you can talk yourself into some pretty rough situations just by, oh, well, I've never been able to be trans before. Maybe I just can't be trans, which other people really hate that as a myth in hypnosis. And I agree with it. My experience, I kind of felt the same way at the very beginning. And then all it took was a simple tweak to an induction, and down I went. It's being able to get that information from people who go, oh, no, I understand where you're coming from. This is all you need to do. Not something you really find easily online. And it's just that hands-on people have experienced it. They know how to help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really easy to learn on your own how to hypnotize or do trance with a very neurotypical, normal, easy to trance subject. Learning more than that, it's really helpful to have the community and all that experience with you.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about it from a neurotypical versus neuroatypical perspective.
I mean, everything you're gonna find in the books is what appeals to the largest crowd. It's nice to get to see the weird cases, because at the end of the day, we're all weird in one way or another.
Absolutely. Well, like you pointed out, suggestions impact everybody differently. Our brains are all wired differently. We've all had different experiences. I say the color gray, and you may spell it A-Y or E-Y, depending on how you grew up. And that can mean the difference between, how you see something. Yeah. All right. So, in the 4.5 years that you've been involved in hypnosis in general, what's one of the biggest changes that you've seen happen in the community? Wiseman had brought up about content or consent culture being a big thing. I'm trying to think of what everybody else had said, but what's your opinion?
I'm not sure if this is a factor of myself getting further into the community or the community itself changing, but there seems to be far more the cooperative approach to things. Far more of people wanting to share and do these hey, I'm just going to give a workshop on this. Yeah, I'm just going to explain this cool thing that I learned to do. The community seems, from what I've seen, to be becoming more and more of a community rather than just a collection of people who like something. And again, that may have just been that I'm seeing parts of it because I'm getting sort of more invested and closer into the community myself, but it definitely seems like a good thing and a welcome thing.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think that I've seen kind of the same thing. I was blown away by how open everybody is. Coming into this community, I think that everybody, well, kink, and I kind of attribute kink and hypnosis community kind of being similar because they are so similar in so many ways, but that you get into a kink community and everybody is so used to being different to an extent, or to worry about all of these other things that don't even cross other people's minds, that everybody's so welcoming. We have at least a common shared experience that allows us to bond either quickly or to understand each other's communication or communication style a lot easier. And the hypnosis community in general feels that way, that there are just so many people out there who are like, oh yeah, totally this thing, or oh hey, no, watch out for this, or oh hey, will you want to work with me on something? That you're right. It is, and I've only been in it less than a year. That it's so many people just want to have those conversations. They want to involve each other.
the end of the day, pretty much everyone who's in this community, everyone who's involved with this kink, with this hobby, however you want to refer to it, is doing it because they're passionate about it. And people want to share and delight in something they're passionate about. They want to be like, oh, this is really cool. Let me show you this. If you've not come across this, it's great. We want to get other people excited about what we're excited about.
No, and that's absolutely true. I think everybody loves that. I think that's the reason why we all nerd out over all the little things. God, I think every time somebody gets a new shiny of some kind on Twitter, oh dear God, oh look, I got a new pocket watch. Oh look, I got a new shiny crystal. Ooh, you know what? We're passionate. We want to improve. We want to agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, with that, is it something? I guess the better question is, what's something you always want to see more of in the community? Is it going to be continuing that collaborative culture? Is it being more open with new individuals? What do you feel is something that could grow in the community?
I think I would say this is coming partly as from my side as sort of sort of video content producing. I'd love to see more diversity in the types of people we're seeing as subjects in sort of like media, be that, you know, the sort of like the porn, the demos, all that kind of stuff. I think very often it's female subject focused. I'd love to see more diversity in that sort of female top, male bottom, male top, male bottom, non-binary, sort of anywhere on that spectrum. Just change things up, keep things fresh, keep things new, make sure everyone's, you know, gets to see some aspect of themselves in the role they identify as.
No, or I should say that's an absolutely great point. I think that there was some conversation about that, and I think most of us who are happy on either side of the pocket watch are happy to demo in situations just because why not? Hell, we're all getting our trans cookie. Why not get to enjoy something different? But that's very true. I think that there was a conversation about how they wanted to see more diversity, and even in hypnotists, that they felt like it was not the same persons over and over, but they wanted to see and encourage more people of color, people who were outside the traditional gender roles. Anybody who was interested, you know, hypnosis is for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or who you choose to focus on. It's for
Absolutely.
anybody who chooses to.
The brains all look like little wet, wrinkled walnuts. It doesn't matter what's wrapped around them.
That's a perfect way of looking at it. All right. Let's just crack this walnut, see what's inside. See, there'll be a nice little mental image for somebody. So you talked about the London Hypnosis Workshop. For somebody who's never been to like a group or a convention before, what would be some advice you would give them about how to approach it? You know, what views should you have when you walk in?
I mean, it's easier said than done, I know, but jump in with both feet. I went to my first in-person event was the London Hypnosis Workshop. I went to that not knowing anyone who was there, not knowing anyone who was going, just by myself, and had an absolutely amazing time and made some great friends and got to know people and learned a lot, and it was amazing. Like, the community is massively inviting and massively welcoming. Go along, be genuine, be yourself, be friendly. You'll love it, probably. There's just such a wonderful, welcoming joy in people when they say, oh, you're new. Let me help you to find all these amazing things that I enjoy. And that's really great. I've never seen anyone be sort of in the things I've been to. I've never seen someone be sort of like, "Oh, you're not welcome here because you're not good enough." oh, you're not welcome here because you're new. That's never been something I've come across at any form of con or event. And I think that's a really great thing. So jump in, find out what you like. Don't be afraid to be the new person, because soon you'll be able to be helping the next new person get settled like you did.
That's a great advice. I think that the point I love to highlight in what you said is being genuine, being yourself. That was
Mm.
one thing at my first convention that I got told many a time, was that I was very open, I was very genuine about everything, and I wanted to make friends more than anything else, to meet new people and hear their ideas. And that
Mm.
in itself was the key, I think, for meeting so many amazing individuals and having such great opportunities, was just, hey, you don't have to be this cool, amazing person. You don't have to be the knowledgeable person who can answer any question. If you're new, you're new. Be open about it.
Mm.
And if you don't understand something, don't hesitate to just raise your hand and be like, what do you mean by that? Because it's never a bad thing for somebody who's talking about something to go through the steps or the process of something, because I think personally that helps educators, because then they can realize maybe they either don't communicate it effectively, or it's good for them to go through the steps for themselves, or just to find a better way to help other people understand.
Absolutely. And as someone who's done the workshops, it's quite helpful when you get those kind of questions, because it helps you to ask, okay, what assumptions have I been making? Like, what knowledge have I been assuming that the people in this class will know, and therefore, how could that be subverted? Like, do we have to assume that's true? What if we don't? Which can lead to some interesting thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's led to a lot of, okay, so taking a step back kind of conversations where it's, all right, where do we need to figure out the line is? Where do you guys start?
Well, exactly. Or we've been doing it this way, but what if we did something else? Okay, who wants to be a lab rat?
And whenever you ask that question, how many people keep their hands down?
Yeah, it's never, you're never shy of volunteers for that kind of situation, are you?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about the community. Oh, you want to be a lab rat? Sure, play with my brain, see what you can do. Fair enough. So, what's one of your favorite things about going to groups? Is it just the classes? Is it the people you meet? Is it the opportunity to just share experiences, meet old friends?
Sharing experiences, definitely. Sort of both being able to sort of share your experiences with other people, get their perspectives on things, say, hey, I found this really cool thing that I've been doing, and for someone else to say, oh, that is cool. What about this? Have you thought about doing it this way? Like, being able to take all of people's different life experiences, hypno experiences, skills, and mash them all together. Workshops are great. Learning new things is great. Learning old things in new ways is fantastic. One of the things I enjoy the most is like the social time. Going to these kinds of things and just being able to enjoy the time to just mess around, or like have a play evening where everyone's just trying ridiculous things. You know, don't forget that it's fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Play around with it.
Well, like you said, it's a passion for everybody. Why wouldn't you want to play around with it? Why wouldn't you want to take the opportunity to just enjoy it with people who are passionate about it just like you?
Exactly.
So do
When
you
you've
have
got a
any...
whole room full of people... Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish, please.
I'm saying when you've got a whole room full of people who are, all staring at two people trying to figure out how to make a particular ridiculous trance suggestion work, it's just a great atmosphere.
Did the subjects kind of feel like the rest of everybody else is just rubbing their hands together, cackling evilly, or? 'Cause I feel like
I think that's
equally
sometimes the
worked.
attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any fun stories or memories that you feel you'd love to kind of entice people with or share today? Something you always find it be a fun way to talk about what groups are, and maybe some of the fun people should enjoy.
It's just a lot of very silly stories in many cases, like ridiculous things people have done, like watching someone having been hypnotized to forget how to do hypnosis, desperately trying to trance someone, or like learning particularly niche ways to approach certain language or certain modalities, and just being like feeling that buzz in you of really wanting to go and try it straight away because, oh, that might work for that thing that I've been, coming up against a wall in. And it's just, it's less the individual memories and the individual workshops and more what it all comes together to. It's just piling that knowledge in and giving you more and more of repertoire to work with, because the more you've got, the more combinations, exponentially, the more techniques and skills and ideas you've got, the more combinations you can put them together in. And then the more you can share those with other people. Because at the end of the day, hypnosis has to be a collaborative thing. You've always, a hypnotist on their own isn't going to achieve much. A subject on their own is not going to get very far. It's always got to be in relation to other people. And I think that's one of the reasons that the cons work so well. It's all about building those connections.
No, and that's an amazing point to bring up. I think especially in the current state of the world, that's a valuable thing to think about. That those relationships, building on those experiences and getting to know more people in the community, but also to how to continue to strengthen those. It's important. Like you said, people who are subjects on their own or hypnotists on their own don't really get that far. That it's by nature is a collaborative setup. And I was thinking for a second, oh well, but hypnotists can hypnotize themselves. But really, to a certain, to a real regard, I think the benefit from the loss, not benefit, is the fact that those individuals would have only one perspective, their own. They wouldn't get those valuable insights like you were talking about, the niche language that would help them understand a better way to phrase something, to help them understand why their brain may not take something into play.
And it's just fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes sexy as hell, but that's another matter.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of conversation that goes on around that. The classes themselves, they always lend to those very charged atmospheres of, ooh, that was really cool. Can I do that on you? Looking towards your friend. No, fine.
Or just you sort of look at the person next to you and you just sort of raise an eyebrow and get a nod in return. It's like, yeah.
And with a name like Sinister, I just imagine that where you turn, it's raise your eyebrow, and somebody's like, smile. Yeah.
It's good things, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to make it to more of them.
Absolutely.
Both, distanced and once things start to happen in person again.
One topic that came up this last week in conversation with a bunch of people was talking about online hypnosis communities. With the world being struck by COVID like it is, a lot of people have found themselves deprived of access to not only hypnotists but subjects. And one of the conversation was like, what would be advice that you would give to people on how to find community? Do you feel that the community out there has a lot to offer and is very strong for people online, or do you feel that it was better in person, it's doing okay online, or do you feel like it's really growing now that we've all been stuck indoors for 10 months and going?
I think we've got an advantage in that hypnosis is one of the kinks that works far better online. I think the people who are really, really into rope are struggling a bit more than the hypnotists in terms of, not getting their kink itch scratched. But it's definitely more difficult. But in terms of trying to find people, I think I'd always say find friends first, find a community first, find like a Discord server or a bunch of Twitter friends or, whatever, wherever it is you hang out online, find a group of people who you click with and get to know them. Because hypnosis is something so interpersonal, it's always going to come from there first. Find friends and then figure out if you want to trance them rather than go around looking for the hypnotist for you or the subject for you. It's always better built on that sort of friendship. Yeah. Bit cliched advice, I guess.
No, it's not cliched at all because I think everybody agrees that rapport is an absolute thing when it comes down to hypnosis. I think that people you work with on a regular basis that you have a good rapport with will drop you faster than anybody else because not only has your brain kind of become accustomed to it, but you have that trust. You know what you're trying to do there versus it being somebody that you never really talked to. It's a cold start, and there's a lot of, I think, miscommunication up front. But
I think the other thing to say is find the community that works for you. Like, there's, even just looking at Discord, there's got to be hundreds of different hypno servers out there. Find the one that works for you. If you're really big on big groups, big servers might be good for you. If you prefer something where you can get to know everyone on a server individually, then probably the main erotic hypnosis server isn't for you. Find something small where you can build up that tighter community. Find where you will fit. Find where you'll be comfortable. Don't try and be everywhere.
And that is sound advice for those of us who like to just be on every server we can, because you know what? You're not going to get to know everybody. Spend your time wisely. Well, and I think with the COVID world being what it is, it's led to a lot of opportunity for, like you said, the rise of hypnosis being more effective online. I know that was something when I first came back without a community, I was worried about. How do I continue going forward with that, and have continued to find more people online to work with more than anything else. And since everybody is kind of stuck at home anyways, it's led to a lot of free time for individuals to work on stuff like that. It's amazing.
It's interesting. Here in the UK, I'd say that we were almost having the opposite problem before the pandemic. So there were a lot of us who were like, oh, we all talk to each other online, but we only meet like twice a year at these big events. Let's try and set up more munches and more meetings and more like regular things that we can all go to. Obviously, that's been sort of put on hold.
Yeah.
But
And see, I think that I would agree that over here in the U.S. it's somewhat similar, because I think that there are really only 5 major hypnosis conventions that go on every year, and everybody has them kind of ingrained in their mind. But community, because we are such a large, we're going to go with continent, just because country, we're all subdivided all over the place. I live in the Midwest, where to the Northeast there's a community. To the far west, there's a community. To the far south, there's a community. But smack dab in the middle, there's nothing but open plains, baby.
Yeah.
But the Discord servers, honestly, the advent of Discord, I don't know where the world would be right now if it hadn't existed before this, because you can start up a Discord server for anything. There's no cost tied to it, and communities have just sprung up like wildfire.
Absolutely. It's really been a good thing. I can't imagine if we're all still trying to use IRC or something.
Oh, God. Trying to have Skype conversations. IRC, man. I mean, you're throwing it way back.
But yes, it's been a really good thing. And the sort of ability to just spin up a server for a convention online and just have, okay, this is just for this, and we're going to talk about all the classes, and then it'll slowly fade away with some people still talking, and it'll just die down until the next one. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, it allows people to have those communications, those conversations, maybe even just for one single collaboration, and then let it die off. It's not something that has to be built up amazing or, complete. It just has to serve the purpose that it was designed for. After that, see what happens.
Absolutely. So thank you, whoever you are, Discord devs. You have enabled much kinky filth. I'm sure that was what you intended when you made your intended to be a gaming chat software. It's been taken over by the perverts. Sorry.
We'll treat it kindly. We won't bitch to you about all the things that don't work. We just love it the way it is. Thanks so much. So I think we've kind of come to the end of the road, but do you have any final thoughts or any advice that you have to people who are enjoying your dulcet tones right now? Things that they should look for if they're over in Europe, because I do hear that Europeans, you guys do not have any conventions really. You don't have a lot of opportunity to get together. Any advice for finding?
We've got bits and pieces. We've got if you're in the UK, there's the London Hypnosis Munch, which happens every couple of months normally. Everything I'm about to say is with a pinch of when there isn't a global health crisis. There's, I think, a similar event up in Edinburgh. There was talk about trying to get one set up in Manchester, maybe setting one up in Nottingham. There's the there was the what was it called? The UK Recreational Hypnosis Workshop, which was meant to be happening again this November, but obviously isn't. That happened in Wales. There's the UK Hypnosis Workshop, which happened in London in the start of the year, usually, I think. There was what was Hyde, which was a new one that was getting off the ground in Germany, which had to be cancelled because it was just as the pandemic was starting, but that's something to look out for. These things are happening. I think it's very much a growing community in that regard. More and more are popping up because there's more and more interest for them and more demand for them. I'd also say keep an eye out for your regular kink events. Don't be afraid to go along to those, because hypno-kinksters are welcome at kink events. Who knows, you might find some new interest that you didn't know you had. General kinky perverts are interested in hypnosis. I've run workshops at, for instance, Kinkfest in the UK 2 or 3 times now on just a general intro to hypnosis. And those have been packed because there's so much interest in it. Find what works for you, find your community. And if there isn't one, build one. Yeah.
Advice everybody should take to heart. If you build it, they will come.
Absolutely.
Oh God, that's such a bad joke and so cliche. Double entendre, stop. So anyways, well, Sinister, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Not at all.
Really appreciate you providing your view from, a better position outside the U.S. We're a little muddled right now, so we appreciate outside input.
Oh, we really have our own problems, don't you worry.
As long as we're all
together.
Yes,
it's been a genuine pleasure.